This podcast is brought to you by Business Radio, powered by Wharton, originally airing on SiriusXM.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Ken Smithers, professor here at the Wharton School. You're listening to Your Money Business Radio, SiriusXM 132. The rest of the show, I have a financial planner with me, Tom Meyer, back in studio taking your calls about your own financial situation. So if you want to know how to invest your money, save for retirement, kids, college, anything related to your money, live on Tuesdays, grab the phone, give me a call here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-7866. Go back to the phone lines like 45 seconds here. Welcome back to the studio. Tom Meyer is CEO of Meyer Capital Group in Marlton, New Jersey. His grandfather founded the firm in 1963 as a fee-only firm. Not very common back then, over 50 years ago. And welcome back to this studio, Tom.
Kent, thanks. Always a pleasure.
And Tom is quite devoted. He had quite an adventure the last time he was here, getting home with a flat tire, I guess.
Yeah, pouring rain.
Pouring rain. So I appreciate you coming back. So tell us, I'll go back to phone lines in just a minute here. Tom, tell us, remind us a little bit about your firm. If you have a typical client, what's he or she like?
Sure. Well, as you said, my grandfather truly was a pioneer, taught me everything about the fee-only business. I came in about 1982 when the Dow was at 780. Honestly, I don't feel that old. But as all my friends were selling tax shelters, remember those?
Yeah.
Getting 10, 12%.
That's all before the 1986 tax reform.
That is correct.
Yeah,
and then they were rendered worthless after that.
Yeah,
but they still got their big-time commission. My grandfather said, hey, you got to do what's right by clients 100% of the time. This is the way to do it. And the rest is history.
Yep.
So.
Good. Welcome back. Thanks so much, Tom. And let me go right back to the phone lines. Jason, you're up. How can I help you, man? From Florida.
Hi, Ken. Pretty much I was in the cliche scenario where everybody says when you're renting a house, you're pretty much throwing money away. I'm 33 years old, and income is about 115 with my job, and I have some extra, another 30 to 40,000 that comes in from flipping houses on the side. I recently just purchased my first home last July, and I've never purchased a home, never really researched too much in it, but I did err on the caution side of going with a $150,000 house, even though I was approved up to $400,000.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
And so I want to play it safe and sorry because you never know what the future holds.
Yeah.
So I did not want to get stuck in that situation to where you lose your job.
Sure.
And you can't afford your real estate payment, mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So my mortgage payment's only $1,050. Not bad at all.
And what's the rate? What's the rate?
They have 4.99, and I was told that it was that's decent at that time because it's considered a low rate mortgage. That if it was going to be $250,000 or higher, the rate would have been dropped down a lot more.
Oh, okay. So it's 4.99%. Yeah, it's basically 5%. And the point is that it sounds like you didn't pay a lot of points, and so as a result, they have to kind of make their money somehow. They're charging a high interest rate for that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe I did like a 0.25 points on it, and I only did $4,600 down payment instead of a 20%.
Yep. Okay.
So the biggest thing that was a shocker to me is, of course, once the first mortgage payment comes in and you look at it and you're like, hey, $198 goes to principal.
Yeah.
Here's another $700 going to interest, which to me is throwing money away again.
Yeah.
So that one was a little bit off.
All right. So what's your question? Is it so you said you were breaking up earlier. You said something about $115,000. That's savings that you have, or is that your income? What was that?
That's my income with my 8 to 5 job.
Okay. And so what is the the question here is how to maybe pay off the mortgage a little bit faster versus doing other things, or what is it?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at like an amortized loan payment program for 30 years, I noticed that if I'm able to just pay off a lot of principal payments up front, I can drop my 30-year loan to be at the level of like a 15.
Sure, yeah.
So it's on that 30-year loan.
So how much more would you how much more would you pay off every month? How much more would you do? Like $500 or what?
No, easily like $1,000.
Okay, $1,000. So,
principal.
and are you also contributing to a retirement plan right now? What else are you doing?
No, I've recently got into house flipping with a family member of mine, and so I've actually taken a large loan out of my 401k due to the
Whoa. So this income, this $115,000 income, is this a result of your house flipping, or you said it's an 8 to 5 job, but that's not your house flipping? That's house flipping
is completely a side gig.
Okay, so this is $115,000. Is it fairly stable income, pretty safe income?
Yeah, probably for the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay, and this house flipping, let's not even worry about the income coming in from it's a pretty risky thing. How much do you have in your 401k?
After the loan right now, around $60,000.
$60,000. And what kind of loan did you take out of your 401k?
15-year loan for about $30,000.
$30,000. Do you know what the interest rate on that is?
I pay. Not sure what the interest rate was. It was low. My monthly payment to repay it back was $185 a month.
Yeah, it's hard for me to do the calculation off the top of my head on the interest rate. I mean, a lot of times people say the interest rate doesn't really matter. You can kind of paint yourself. That logic isn't quite right. But nonetheless, I think we want to kind of focus to certainly get into certainly some retirement assets. And the 401k, is it all stocks that you're holding, or holding any bonds right now?
Not too sure on that one. It's one of those managed retire at 2050 retirement.
Yeah,
loan.
So it probably has a little bonds. I won't be surprised. It's like something like 80-20, 80% stocks, 20% bonds at this point. All right, so Tom, those are the facts. I mean, your thoughts in terms of should he pay off a mortgage a little bit faster, or should he try to pay off, get back into that 401k and make, beef up his retirement a little bit faster?
Well, that whole 401k threw me for a curveball, obviously. I mean, I hate to, hear what that, and I get it from the investment side, but let me tell you, from a former flipper, you get caught holding a bag one time, and that loan's going to come back to haunt you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very scary thing. And, if you have the opportunity, if you flip and you can pay that loan off, and I wouldn't touch your 401k. You can borrow for investment. You can't borrow for your retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And in particular, Jason, what I would tell you is, it's a dangerous leverage game that you're playing right now, because that $30,000 also becomes due if you separate from your job, that 8 to 5, p.m. job. That $30,000 becomes due typically 30 days, 60 days. And if you don't, pay it back within that period, then, it qualifies as a distribution. So now you face both penalties and pretty hefty tax rate on it as well. And so what I would really do is do everything to get that $30,000 back into your 401k, still make contributions to your 401k. And then if, you can get on you have a pretty decent income for Florida. It sounds like, I didn't ask you your whole marital situation and so forth, but it sounds like you're probably, with $115,000 a year, probably have reasonable expenses and probably reasonable cash flow. So what I would be doing, instead of house flipping, and I know it's tempting in a place like Florida, but keep in mind, lots of, it feels like 2005 again. Everybody excited, but you got to just be super careful. Yeah, really beef up that 401k. Get that $30,000 back in. What a lot of people will tell you is 4.99%, 5%. That's not such a bad, return to be, paying to a bank, because after all, the stock market you can do better and so forth. That's not adjusting. That logic doesn't adjust for risk. This is a risk-free rate that you're paying for your home loan of 5%. And by the way, also you're paying PMI likely at this point as well on top of that. So what I would do is, first priority is shore up that 401k, at least get that $30,000 back in there. And then the second point there is then figure out how much you should be making additional contributions to that 401k. At least if you get employer match, make sure you for sure get that employer match. That's going to be better than anything. Figure out some tax savings from that. So that's kind of your second step there. After you get that $30,000 back in your 401k, make sure you at least get the employer match. Your third thing is make sure you have a decent emergency account. saying, because you're borrowing against your 401k, that's really scary. It tells me you don't have a big emergency account. So that is what you should really be doing, especially if you're in this business of house flipping. And then, only then, I would come back to this mortgage. It's a pretty high interest rate on a risk-free basis. And so if you get those other things done and you get an emergency account, at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, depending on how variable your income of your 8 to 5 job is, I would then would pay off your home a little bit faster. Once you got your $30,000 back in your 401k, once you got the employer match of additional contributions, once you have that emergency account there, then I would return to that home. And the reason why is a 5% risk-free payment is pretty high, and plus then you can get out of PMI eventually. But that's the order I'd be stacking things. So thanks so much for calling, Jason. Really appreciate it. Good luck with that. And again, speaking of Tom Meyer, give us a call. Love to answer your questions here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-7866. Let me go to Annette calling North Carolina. How can I help you, Annette?
Thank you, Dr. Smithers, for taking
Sure.
my call. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I researched this on the web. Can a 73-year-old take out a Roth IRA? I couldn't find anything definitive.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, and because you're at above the age of required minimum distributions, and so at age 70, so you certainly don't want to do a regular IRA. You actually cannot. But let me ask you this: tell me about what would you open that Roth against? What type of income would you? Do you actually have things not like Social Security income, but do you actually have things like employer, like you're a greeter at Costco or something like that, where you are making some type of wage income?
Okay, well, actually, I'm asking for a friend. No, this friend is 73, and he has more income than he can
But what's
handle.
the source of that income? Is it things like pensions and Social Security, or is it actually employer-based income?
It's not. It's pension, Social Security, military, disability.
Yeah. Yep.
It's no wages.
No wages. Okay. So this is a quick one. Tom, I'm going to have to hand it over. I know the rules, but you want me?
Go.
All right.
Go.
Yeah. So if it's a regular IRA, you can't do it at age 70 and a half or older. A Roth, you can technically do it. It's still, though, you need to have the right type of income. So from the government's perspective, something like a Social Security income, pension income, military income, that's not the right type of income. You need to have employer-based income to actually open up the Roth and put that money in there. But so the answer to your question is there are, in fact, no age limit on the Roth IRA. Your friend, it sounds like, is going to hit up against is actually the requirement of the type of income that he can contribute against. And unless he has, like, he's getting some money being a greeter at Costco or something like that, it doesn't have to be much money. He can put almost all of that into the Roth, but it has to be what's called the earned wage income. Is that helpful in that?
That's great.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for calling. Really appreciate it. And again, speaking of Tom Meyer, doing a great job answering questions here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-7866. Love to answer a question. Give me a call. And let me go to Bedford, calling from Illinois. How can we help you, Bedford?
Hey there. Thanks very much for taking my call.
Sure.
I have a one main question, and then
Sure.
if there's time, I'll ask the second one. The first one has to do with my parents who are facing possible very large medical bills. And I was wondering if there's any way that using a trust, whether it's revocable or irrevocable, can help in that basically reducing that burden.
Yeah.
And then
So let me ask you this. I mean, are you trying to qualify your parents for something like the Medicaid program that has an asset test or SSI benefits? Like, what is your it's not like that the trust itself just creates income that helps you qualify for potentially for certain things. What's your motivation here?
It was mentioned as my mother was leaving this subacute care rehab place where my dad is. It was mentioned to her as if she was asked if she had considered that, and so I'm not too sure of the details.
Yeah. So typically, yeah. I mean, but let me ask you this: how How much assets do your parents have? Not including the house. The house doesn't matter here. The primary.
Not including the house.
Yeah.
Roughly $2 million.
$2 million.
Tradable assets.
And I assume they're not trying to figure out how to game the Medicaid or SSI, benefits programs. They're not going to want to go to nursing care and the Medicaid program or something like that. Is that right?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't think so at those assets. They probably want to have a private pay. So, Tom, your thoughts, is there any particular reason for the irrevocable trust? It is important that it would be irrevocable in this
It's
case.
got to be irrevocable.
Yeah.
Can't be revocable.
Yeah.
5-year look back.
Yeah.
Going to 7, I think. They're really sticking their claws into everyone. So, the thought process might have been something to look at on the irrevocable side a few years ago, but right now it's going to be kind of tough to get those assets where you need to be.
Yeah, and unless they're trying to game, and I shouldn't use the word game, but it is essentially game the Medicaid SSI program. There's not going to be a lot of value at those assets. In particular, if they had low assets that were not included in the home, because the home is not part of the Medicaid test for long-term care, the asset test. So the Medicaid has this income test and it also has an asset test, but does not include your primary residence. Does include in things like vacation homes and things like that. What you can potentially do is put that any other assets into what's called an irrevocable trust. It has to be irrevocable because essentially they're transferring the property at that point to say you. That's why what becomes irrevocable is pretty important. And so, but still, even if they do that, as Tom mentioned, there's currently a 5-year look back rule that basically says Medicaid will say, we're not going to just look at your assets today. We're going to look at your assets, several years ago, and we'll actually use that in the asset test. So where an irrevocable trust becomes really valuable is when you have pretty low assets and you really want to figure out how to pass those financial assets, the non-home assets, to a loved one and therefore jump on the Medicaid system or SSI for benefits. But you have some foresight, you're doing it 5 years in advance and so forth. Or if you have really high assets. Now, the the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act increased the state tax limit anyway, basically doubled it. So they have way less assets than what would be necessary there. Sometimes for estate planning purposes, you can put money into irrevocable trusts where it gains capital gains in that vehicle that is not going to be part of the estate for the estate tax. But again, we're far away from that. So they're kind of this middle ground where I actually don't see a big obvious need for it. Maybe there's something going on in Illinois that I don't know about because some of that Medicaid is actually paid for by both the federal government and split with the state. But again, if they're not trying to game the Medicaid system, there's not anything that jumps out at me as the reason why they would be using an irrevocable trust in this context, either for tax management or qualification of benefits. So thanks so much for calling in, Bedford. Really appreciate it. Great call. And again, speaking with Tom Meyer, doing a great job answering questions here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-7866. Let me go to John, also calling from Illinois. How can I help you, John?
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great.
Okay. Just to lay down the groundwork,
Yep.
me and my wife both maxed out our 401k. We've maxed out the backdoor Roth, and we maxed out the HSA. We have a solo 401k established, and if we do any extra 1099 work, we do profit sharing. But my question is about whole life.
All right, man. You're doing that well, John. And just be
Nice
clear,
job.
how old are you, John?
44.
44. Okay. So I just want to make sure if you're above 50, sometimes people don't know that you can max out the 401k with a catch-up provision that allows you to contribute a little bit more. But okay. So I assume you're doing the not just the maximum to get your employer match, but it sounds like you really know what you're doing. You're doing the maximum.
Yeah, 18,500, 19,000, the max.
Yep. Good. So go ahead.
So my question is this, I purchased a whole life policy, and it has something called a paid-up rider, where the policy is for $500,000, and it costs $8,000 a year. But if you put $15,000 in, then the actual death benefit increases.
Yeah.
So the rate of return on just the cash value isn't that much. It's like 3 to 4%, but the death benefit increases at about 8 or 9% a year. So I was thinking of the whole life in terms of maybe putting it in an irrevocable life insurance trust and using it as a mechanism to basically transmit assets to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of people aren't a big fan of the whole life policies, but is that way of thinking kind of not the right way to be looking at it?
Well, how much assets are we talking about here, John? We're talking about $500,000 from the policy. I mean, talk to me about your other assets. How much are we talking about there?
The other assets, like in terms of what? In terms of
like if you're the drop, if you and your spouse were to pass away suddenly today, how much would be left to your kids in the form of your 401k, HSA, Roth, house, everything else?
Maybe about $1.4 million.
Okay, so you're well below kind of the the wealth tax kind of limits here. All right, so you're using the whole life. You're trying to use it as something to pass to your kids. Let me also finally ask you, and I'll turn over to Tom. Do you have any kids who are dependent on you likely for the rest of your own natural life? And that is, sometimes a kid with a special needs who is going to be dependent on you for the rest of your natural life. Are you in that situation at all?
Well, my kids are less than 5, both of them.
Yeah, but there's not like a diagnosis.
I don't know.
Yeah, but there's no diagnosis of severe autism or anything else that would make them dependent.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, and it probably is. I mean, probably not, which is a good thing. So, all right, Tom, your thoughts?
John, first of all, great job.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you have any life insurance at all at this point?
I'm a physician, so I make a lot of income. My wife is like, if you pass, that's going to be a problem,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
we're all worth more dead, John.
So what is your income, and then how much outside this $500,000 whole life policy? How much other life insurance do you have?
So I have about $500,000.
Okay.
My income.
Yep.
And then I have about $5.5 million in term, and the $500,000 whole life.
Okay, right.
Did you buy the whole life?
He did.
You did.
Yeah. He's just wondering if he
should put into the insurance trust.
Well, yeah, and also if he should exploit the rider to make bigger contributions.
So the $5.5 million. Let's talk about that for a second. The term life. How many years is that term?
The term is, I think some of it is, it's like till 65.
Yeah.
The term stuff, I think, ends around 65 for me.
Okay.
All right. So presumably you're going to be working maybe between 65 and 70, but at that point you also have saved up a lot of assets as well, and your kids will be off in college and their own doctors and so forth.
And one thing you want to remember too is, actually, I just went through this myself, is I had these term policies that I had maybe 5 years on, and I went ahead and I upped another 20 years on top of that. While it was still cheap.
Yeah.
Before I got a little bit too old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, he's just using this as an investment product is what it comes down to.
Yeah, John, I mean, my thoughts and the whole life, I would have to go through the, more detailed calculations and so forth. I don't see it as an obvious contender for what you're doing, because first, I don't think you're going to have enough assets when you retire that you're going to have to worry about enough non-liquid assets. In other words, if you had a business or a farm or something like that, and that would put you way over the state tax limit, and for whatever reason you don't want to sell part of that asset to deal with the tax bill, in that case, a whole life policy can play some role. If you have a kid that is dependent on you for the rest of your natural life, that is often the case where we recommend whole life as well, because it's not like it's a term of a dependency that's going to kick off at some point. And so what I think you have quite a bit of life insurance. I mean, less you do have quite a bit of income, but at the same time, it really is about expenses, not replacing income, expenses. and you figure if you were to pass today, you're going to have a good almost $7 million or more of assets that you're leaving your kids and your spouse, and that is going to be quite a bit of assets that they can consume from. Your kids can clearly get through college. Your spouse is likely going to be provided for the rest of her life. So I don't see an obvious need for the whole life policy. I'll tell you one exception to this. We had somebody on the show probably a year ago from TIAA, and I often bash on complicated products, but this is a product that I had on the show only because, and I don't product promote or anything like that. I have no financial interest with these companies, but they had a universal life policy that had no surrender fees and no commission charges. They actually use it as part of their asset management program, and even I thought they were really terrific in how they presented it. They said you really should have an insurance need still for using this product. But the case scenario that I found that could be useful for a product like that would be if you're looking to do more safe investment, something like a bond type fund, and you just don't have any more capacity in your 401k, HSA, Roth, and so forth. You kind of max that out, but you're still trying to put a bunch of money away aside in kind of safe assets. Normally those safe assets would be held in something like if that would be in your taxable account, that's not very tax efficient. But if that were the only option available to you, and you're still trying to get a lot more safe assets, that would be a scenario where you could use their universal life policy to basically, assuming that you still had an insurance need, to essentially load up on that because of the tax preference. It's a safe-like asset. But even there, here's the scenario: is that, and I know a couple of people in that scenario. I happen to be in that scenario myself, in the sense that my taxable brokerage accounts are much bigger than, say, 401ks and HSAs, things like that. So in my case, I actually have my 401ks and everything in 100% stocks because I, don't want to. I'm sorry, 100% bonds. I've said just the opposite. 100% bonds already, because that's where I want to generate as much of my bond income in those tax-deferred vehicles. Then there's taxable brokerage accounts where it's much larger, and I don't, I normally would just hold stocks there, but I still want to hold some more lower risk stuff, and I don't have any more capacity to put into like a 403b plan and things like that. Max all that out. It's already 100% bonds to begin with, so I would have to put that into like my taxable brokerage account, and that's not tax efficient. In that case, it's something like a universal life policy would potentially be useful in that case. And that was also a policy that has very low fees, no surrender fees and things like that. So it's a very unusual product. But that's the scenario you really have to be on. First of all, you have to have still an insurable need. The second one is you really still have to have the situation where you've just basically your 401k, HSA, Roth, and so forth is already 100% bonds, and therefore your taxable brokerage accounts are basically a bunch of stocks, and you just don't want to hold more bonds. You just feel misallocated because you still don't have enough bonds, even though all your 401k and HSA and so forth are 100% bonds. You have such a big taxable brokerage account, you still don't have enough bonds, and you would like to hold more bonds. I mean, the only place you can do it is in a taxable brokerage account. And so in that case, I would recommend an insurance product. But those are pretty unusual cases for doing that. And that was a particular useful product for that purpose because of no commissions and fees and so forth. Your whole life policy, I don't think that's the position you're in right now. It sounds like your taxable brokerage account is pretty small relative to your 401k, HSA, and Roth, and so forth. So as a result, you're not being forced to hold bonds inside of your taxable brokerage account. Is that right, John? No, right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hello, yeah, it is, but there's other things. One is that my concern is right now I'm below the limit for transferring wealth, but it seems like depend on which way the wind blows, that may change based on what Congress does.
Yeah,
so
you never know.
Yeah. And then the other thing is I live in Illinois. Illinois taxes at $4 million.
Yeah.
So,
true.
And then if one of us dies and it goes into my wife's estate, unless we set it up in a kind of like a trust way, then it doesn't end up becoming $8 million for her. It's still $4 million for her.
Don't forget too, you could take your term policies and tuck them into into an insurance trust also, as long as you don't die within, I think, what, three to 5 years.
Yeah, I forget exactly what the rule is. And then you're going to have to look at Illinois law for that one, for Illinois taxes. Do keep in mind, state taxes tend to be much lower than federal for estates. But also, at times, exactly right. If you want to manage that, you don't have to use it for the whole life policy. You could just take your term policies and also put that as part of your estate planning inside the trust. So, my own opinion is this is probably not, I would have to look at the numbers in a little more detail, but it's probably not the right approach for you, just based on the facts. Because again, I think you have to, the use case for this. It's either a very large, non-liquid asset that you don't want to sell above the state tax limit, or a dependent child for the rest of your natural life, or this very unusual circumstance of a taxable brokerage account much larger than your tax deferred, and you've already put 100% bonds in your tax deferred accounts. But John, thanks so much for calling. I really appreciate it, and I love those kind of more complicated situations that are often very tricky to deal with, but they're important ones. Again, speak with Tom Meyer. Meyer, give us a call. Love to answer your questions here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-7866. So, Tom, let me sneak in the question here, and that is, what are you seeing, today with your clients? Obviously, with a lot of market gyration and so forth. I mean, you've certainly have allocated your clients accordingly to deal with those, the ups and downs, but anything kind of new going on that you
besides
find
the volatility?
Yeah.
It's amazing how we're very strategic rebalancers, very disciplined, and now all of a sudden we're having, through our meetings and we look at our portfolios and say, my God, we had a year's worth of returns in a month and a half, and it's time to rebalance yet again. And I mean, with this volatility, we were rebalancing back into the market, right, in December. And now we have to look at certain asset classes, especially in the small cap and mid cap, which, up 14, 15, 16%. You got to do what you got to do. And sometimes clients call up and say, why are you selling some of this?
Yeah.
It's the right disciplined thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, the greed, look, we're human. Right?
Sure.
Fear is temporary, greed's permanent.
Oh, yeah. And that's it's almost a way to guarantee sub-performance over time is, buy when the market's going up, sell when the market's going down.
Dalbar study.
And that study, by the way, is not perfect, but still it is.
It brings it home, though.
It does bring it home. Yeah. People lose a lot of money just trying to chase returns. And again, speaking of Tom Meyer, here at 1-844-WHARTON, that's 1-844-942-7866. Let me go to David calling in Michigan. How can I help you, David?
Hey, quick question. Do you guys think you can save too much for retirement?
Yeah. Well, you're calling from Michigan, so, you basically know you're going to need a lot of assets in Michigan because, you have to make yourself feel good.
Cold.
When those Wolverines go down this year for the... It's the 10th, 11th year in a row? I'm teasing. Of course, the answer is yes, you could have too much of anything. But, Tom, your thoughts here.
Yes. It's funny because we have a dichotomy of clients that save too much for retirement and never spend a dime. And then the clients that, of course, didn't save enough and want to live their life. So it's a happy medium, no doubt about it. You got to enjoy your life, first and foremost. Yeah. And at the same time, you have to pay yourself. How old are you, David?
55.
You're a young
man. And how much
man.
do you have to save up for retirement? We only have a couple minutes left in the segment, but how much do you have to save up for retirement?
Total cash is about 1.3 right now.
1.3. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think you're on the high side right now. So, I mean, we haven't gone through all your expenses and retirement date and so forth, but you're probably not over saving right now is certainly in my guess. But it's Tom's absolutely right. You could go too far and essentially suppress your consumption too much today. Here's what I would say though, is that a lot of times people really do underestimate how much they're going to need in retirement for a couple of reasons. One is that their out-of-pocket medical expenses are pretty high. Even if you're on Medicare, the average family couple going into retirement today will be expected to pay about $250,000 in out-of-pocket medical expenses. That could be a Medigap policy. That could be some other form of out-of-pocket medical expenses. And also, you could live a long time too. And so a lot of times people aren't, well annuitized. Either they don't have a lot of Social Security and so forth. But also keep in mind just the state of the country. I mean, these programs, entitlement programs, are massively underfunded right now. Social Security, Medicare, and so forth. So, I don't be too pessimistic and assume that you're going to get nothing. But I often tell people, maybe assume 70% of what you currently think is being projected for you. But Tom, any last parting thoughts there?
Well, I'll tell you what throws water into this whole plan. I mean, of our retirement plans is debt. So, David, how's debt?
Dave, any debt?
Yeah.
Debt?
Yep.
Do you have any debt?
No debt.
No debt.
cards,
Well,
no more
there you
debt,
go.
no debt.
Just 1 minute.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so Dom, I mean, it sounds like he's doing certainly pretty good. I would say, David, I mean, just the fact that you asked that question, I think means that you're pretty fiscally responsible. But certainly continue to keep expenses low, keep saving aggressively, and manage that retirement date. I mean, you don't have enough assets, likely. Just guessing, if you want to spend a couple $1,000s today, a month, on expenses, probably not in a position to be retiring now. But come age 65, you could be. But another thing to keep in mind is that you probably do want to postpone your claiming on Social Security till age 70. Most people are much better off doing that, and it also provides a price indexed annuity that's very hard to get into the private market. So thanks so much for calling, David, and that's all we got for this week. I'd love to answer questions here. Give me a call next week here at 1-844-WHARTON. That's 1-844-942-786. Tom, fantastic job once again. Thanks for coming back on the show. And you can find out Tom by going to his website, which is meyercg.com. Meyer, MEYERCG.com. We'll also thank my other wonderful guests today, Sandra Block of Kiplinger, and audio engineer Jeff Simmons, and Michelle Stucker, my producer. See you next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern.
For more insight from Business Radio, please visit businessradio.wharton.upenn.edu.